Hello YouTube. Today we're going to be covering how to get started with the new Daikon Forge GUI toolkit for Unity. This is a very powerful toolkit, in my opinion far more powerful than many of the competitors, and it's very easy to get started. First, we're going to prepare to create our UI by setting up a layer for our UI to reside on. I'm going to call mine GUI. This is set so that the main camera does not render this layer. The GUI camera will render it, so it appears as an overlay. Additionally, I'm going to create some input axes. The reason I'm doing this is because you might want to have keyboard navigable UI, and you want to create a separate axis so that you don't have the WAS and D keys affecting it. You can also use this for game consoles and such. You could set the left thumbstick, for example, to navigate the UI. Just remember these names. Now we're actually going to create a UI. This is very easy. Just pop up the UI wizard. I already have the GUI layer selected. These two values relate to what your UI is going to be used for. Orthographic, this is whether your UI is 2D or 3D. And pixel perfect makes your UI respond to the current resolution. For example, at lower resolutions, your UI elements will scale larger so that they perfectly map to the screen pixels. You might turn this off if you had an in-game display, like maybe a control panel. You don't necessarily want that scaling to the screen resolution. You want it to stay where it is. This input manager section determines how joysticks are used to generate UI events. I'm going to leave this on because this will remain, compatibility between keyboard and joystick seamlessly. This click button will determine which button on the joystick is used to sort of generate mouse up and down events. This is used to, you could use perhaps the A button on an Xbox 360 controller to click, the button that's selected. And then these horizontal and vertical axes are used to generate key events. You might have your UI set up to respond to arrow keys to navigate between elements. So on PC you'd use the arrow keys, but on a console or with a controller you could just use the left thumbstick to navigate them. Or even on a PC you could use the left thumbstick and the keyboard and the mouse. It all works perfectly together. Now we're going to create the UI, and there it is. You notice these red sections over here. We need to assign an atlas and a font to use. So we're going to go create the atlas now. Some things to make sure. You want to disable non-power of 2 so that they don't get stretched if they're not exactly power of 2 textures. You want to make sure read-write enabled is turned on. The texture packer needs to be able to read the textures. And additionally, you have to set the format to RGBA 32-bit. This is required in order to make the texture readable. You'll also want a small plain white texture somewhere in your atlas. This is going to be used by the text field to render the current text selection as well as the caret. So I'm going to select all of my textures. This is very easy. Just user interface, create texture atlas. Just pick where you're going to save this. And there's your atlas. You can see all of the textures we have included in the atlas now. You can also, if you wanted to have a texture that uses 9-splice scaling, you can select the texture next to Edit, and go down here to Border. You can preview what that's going to look like down here. I'm going to set my button to 10 pixels on every side. And this button, if any UIs use this button texture, they will automatically refresh when you click this button, so you can preview it live. I'm going to do this to each of my button images. If you wanted to, you could also, up here, select a texture 2D, or drag it onto this slot, and add textures after your atlas is already created. It'll repack it, and it won't make any difference to you. All your textures will automatically be repacked as efficiently as possible. So now we're going to assign our Tech Blue skin as the default atlas. Now, we're going to need to assign a font to our UI. Daikon Forge GUI uses the angel code format. There's many programs that can export this. The two most popular ones are BM font for Windows, or Hyro, which is Java, so it should work on any computer, Mac or PC. And you want to use the text format, not the XML format. You'll also have a texture generated. This also needs to be non-power of 2 read-write enabled RGB A32-bit. With this font texture and font definition, I'm just going to go to Daikon Forge user interface, create font definition. I'll save it here. It'll automatically use the name defined in the font texture, in the font definition as the name. And there's our font. We're also going to need to add our font texture to the atlas. Just drag it here, add. And finally, make sure our font knows it's part of that atlas and which texture it's using. And our font can now be connected to our UI. Now that our UI is set up, we can create some basic controls. I'm going to start by creating a label. This is of course used to display simple text wherever you need it. Supports many different properties, as you can see. You can have it auto size if you need it. It will automatically resize to encompass any text you want to throw in there. You can also turn that off. You can have it auto height, so the width stays the same, but the height resizes. You can also have it word wrap, so it'll wrap words around this width. You can change the text alignment. And then the coolest feature here is the markup. Labels have an inline styling markup that allows you to colorize parts of the label as well as embed sprites. So for example, I'm going to have markup turned on. I'm going to have red and green parts of a label. This is really simple, just color. And then hexadecimal notation. 2 digits for red, 2 digits for green, and 2 digits for blue. Just wrap the text you want to be colorized. And we'll also embed a sprite here. You don't need a closing tag for this one, you just need the name of the sprite inside an open tag. There you go. You might use this to embed perhaps key images in tutorial text. Oops. to have, I think Unity's not responding here. Oh well. Now we're going to create a button. This obviously is used when you want to have something you can click on. The built-in button lets you specify different sprites for each state of the button. If you wanted to perhaps trigger some animation on hover or something, maybe maybe it smoothly transitions to a highlight color when you hover over it, or some other color when you click on it. You can also hook up tweens fairly easily, but the built-in button, just if you want to throw something up on the screen, it's very good for that. Just hook each of these up. Just enter your text here. And I'm going to change the text align to center. Oh, Unity. Apologize, Unity's acting up on me. Okay, and we're also going to show you how to create sprites as well. It's very simple. Just right-click, hit Control. You see a wide variety of sprites here. We have basic sprites, just stretches to fill the rectangle. Radial sprite, you can have you can have a fill that originates from one of 9 points on the sprite. The most common would be center, of course. You might use this for spell cooldowns, for example. Slice sprite uses 9 slice scaling to scale the sprite, obviously similar to what the button does. Texture lets you specify texture that isn't in the atlas. This will result in another draw call, but it lets you embed textures that weren't included in the atlas before. Tiled will take a texture and tile it across the rectangle. And web actually lets you specify a URL. It's a lot like texture, it'll specify a URL to go and fetch a texture from. If you've used NGUI, you might notice absence of a filled sprite, and that's because all sprites have that functionality. So you don't have to worry about which ones support that and which ones don't. Just going to stick this sprite here, just to show you. There you have it. There's a simple UI created very easily, and it's very, very powerful. That you do want to make sure your main camera isn't rendering the GUI layer. Just something to keep in mind. You can also, if you want to change whether it's 2D or 3D later on, just change the render mode to perspective right here, and you can also change pixel perfect. So for example, I can rotate that, There we go. And look, now it is perspective. A lot of modern UIs seem to do this. I thank you for watching. I hope I've gotten you excited about Daikon Forge GUI. More tutorials will be coming soon.